Hi there, I'm Ann Taylor Pittman, Executive Editor at Cooking Light. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm super excited because I have a special guest here, my good friend and wonderful colleague, Matthew Moore, who is the Community and Content Manager for the Cooking Light Diet. He picked one of his favorite recipes from the diet that we're going to make together today. It's called Noodles with roast pork and almond sauce. It's a little bit of an older recipe from 2009. That's what I love about it.
Oldie but a goodie.
Yes, definitely. Matthew's going to talk a little bit about this in just a second, but I'm going to get started by trimming up some pork tenderloin. So if you've ever worked with pork tenderloin, you know, and I'm just putting on gloves so that I don't have to stop and wash my hands. So if you've ever worked with pork tenderloin, you may have noticed that sometimes there's a little trimming that you need to do with it. So I'm going to flip this guy over. So this is only about a half a pound of pork tenderloin. Usually that's about half of a whole tenderloin. They're usually about this long. So we only need half of that for this recipe. And what I want to show you is how to trim off this part, which is called the silver skin, because it's a little silvery. It's attached on there kind of like skin. So you don't have to trim away, you know, all of this stuff. You can if you want. You know, there's just a little bit of fat, but usually pork tenderloin is so lean that you don't have any fat to trim off. But this silver skin stuff can be a little tough when it cooks and kind of give you the feeling of, you know, tough, chewy bites. And you don't want that because pork tenderloin is so nice and lean that that's one of its great selling points. So I'm going to show you how I usually work with the silver skin here. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to cut a little bit of it up off on a corner. These gloves are a little bit slippery, so I'm going to use one of my tricks, which is grabbing a paper towel, which gives me a little more friction so I can grab onto that. So I've cut just a little edge of it up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, actually, because that's the way that works easiest for me. I'm grabbing onto that little bit that, that I've pulled off already. I'm just using a sharp knife and just kind of cutting down. See, my knife is angled at about maybe 45 degrees, and I'm just cutting across like this because I don't want to trim away the meat. I just want to trim away that silver skin, and that trims it away very cleanly.
Wow.
And then I have a little bit more here. Thank you, Matt.
That's this is a game changer. I didn't know. I've never done it like that before. I usually end up with a lot of good meat left on the skin because I've always done it wrong.
So here we go. I have more here that I need to trim off. I just pulled a little bit off. It gives me something to hold on to with my paper towel. Again, about a 45-degree angle. Gotta have a really nice sharp knife here for that to work. And my pork tenderloin is clean, trimmed up. I just don't like that. Ordinarily, I wouldn't trim this off. It's just that he's kind of flopping around, so he might cook a little oddly in the skillet. So there's that. I'm just going to season this up with just the tiniest bit of salt. It doesn't need a lot, just about 1/8 of a teaspoon. We have a sauce that's going to go with this that adds tons and tons of flavor. I have my oven set to 425 degrees. Again, this is just 8 ounces of pork tenderloin, just a tiny bit of canola oil. You only need about 1/2 teaspoon. Now, if you have like the tail end of a tenderloin, you know, where it gets really kind of thin and narrow at the end, to prevent that from overcooking, what you would do is kind of fold that really thin part kind of up under. This isn't exactly the cut that I'm talking about, but you can fold it under to make it the same thickness as the rest of the tenderloin. So that's another nice little tip there. So I'm just going to put that into the oven, 10 minutes on each side. So Matthew can tell us about this recipe and why he loves it.
Yeah, so the reason I love the noodles with roast pork and almond sauce recipe is because I had never actually cooked with almond butter before, or mint for that matter, or ginger. And so this recipe to me gives you kind of like a restaurant sort of like takeout feel that you can easily make at home. The whole thing comes together in under 45 minutes. And one of the things I like about cooking off my Cooking Light Diet menu is just that you get to make these types of recipes that just kind of expand your wheelhouse in the kitchen. Like You know, there's 3 ingredients, and the chili garlic sauce too, which you use to make the sauce with. I'd
Chili garlic sauce.
never used that before. Now I have some in my kitchen, so you know, if I want to just kind of explore with new ingredients, I have that available for me. So
That's great. So Matthew's going to whip up the sauce for us. So when this comes together, it's almost a complete meal. You just need a little bit, a little vegetable side dish to go with it, or not, but I'm going to encourage you to eat more vegetables. And so Matthew can make the sauce here and explain what all is going in the bowl.
sure, we're going to put a fourth of a cup of almond butter in here. And then we're going to use 2.5 tablespoons of low sodium soy sauce. You want to get that low sodium just because it's a little bit healthier for you. And then you've got some rice vinegar, which that's going to be 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar, 2 tablespoons of pasta water. So don't pour your pasta water out right after you drain that pasta, because you're going to want to use that for the sauce. And then you're going to put 1.5 teaspoons of the chili garlic sauce in there, an 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And the only thing missing is some ginger, which Anne actually has a really neat trick for peeling ginger that I never knew about. I feel like I learn things from Anne every day.
Yay!
Here.
And Rebecca wants to know, is there a reason this meat is diet approved? Could you use a different meat?
You could definitely use a different meat. Now, pork tenderloin is very lean. It's almost as lean as chicken breast. It's somewhere between chicken breast and chicken thighs. You could definitely sub in either of those. Chicken breasts or chicken thighs would go great with these flavors. We like pork tenderloin because it's almost foolproof. Unlike maybe, say, boneless, skinless chicken breast, pork tenderloin is very forgiving to being slightly overcooked. So, you know, a chicken breast, if you slightly overcook it, it's going to be a little dry and maybe not so pleasant. Pork tenderloin is going to be tender. It has a little more wiggle room with it in terms of cooking it properly.
And Sarah wants to know, since you used almond butter in there,
Yep.
can you use other nut butters?
That is a great question, Sarah, and thank you, Rebecca, for your previous question. Absolutely. So Matthew, knowing what you know, like this is one of your favorite recipes, what other nut butters would you suggest?
I would go with peanut butter, cashew butter if you want to use that too. Basically any type of nut butter that you're not allergic to or that you prefer, you could easily swap in for the almond butter.
Yeah. I think the other flavorings, like the nut butter is there to kind of give it richness and kind of a creaminess.
Yeah, it's super
and so
creamy.
I would think pretty much any nut butter would work. So I have this ginger here, and I'm going to show you the easy way. You might have seen this before, but you know, ginger can be a little tricky because there's so many nooks and crannies, but you can just peel it by running a spoon over it.
I'm immediately throwing away all of my peelers when I get home.
And so, like, you know, when you're going around those edges and stuff, it's just sometimes easier to use a spoon. Or if you have little helpers in your kitchen, and vegetable peelers, even vegetable peelers can be a little tricky for kids. You know, I've worked with kids in the kitchen before, not just my own, but other kids, and you know, sometimes a vegetable peeler can be a little dangerous for those little hands, but the spoon, I dare them to try to cut themselves with
even
the
big
spoon.
hands. I've had some battle scars.
So I'm just peeling this. I need about a tablespoon. Thank you.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
So I'm just going to kind of cut this up here, and I always like to kind of square off any edges to make it a little bit easier to cut. So
You know what else I love about this recipe is how much better it tastes the next day.
love
too.
recipes like that.
You know, because I cook for one, so if I'm going to make a recipe that makes 4 servings, I can just portion out the rest of those for the rest of the week. So I've got my lunches already planned out, or my dinners, just whichever one of those I want to do. And that's another reason I'm currently following my Cooking Light diet plan now, and these make-ahead recipes are just super convenient, you know, that store good for the next day, because not everyone has a lot of time to cook during the week. So, you know, if you can make a recipe that is just as good the next day, if not better, that's a great thing to do.
I love that, especially, you know, like you were saying earlier to me, that this does taste better, even better the next day. Okay, this is right about at a tablespoon. I just minced it up. You don't want huge bits, but you want to have a little, it's nice to have a little bit of that crunch in there to give you, you know, something to chew on, and you get those little bursts of that spicy ginger flavor. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can always use, you know, a microplane type grater and just run the ginger over that. So that's the ginger.
I'm gonna mix this up while you're working on that mint.
Yep, so the mint is just a finishing touch,
Mm-hmm.
but Matthew was really talking up the mint earlier.
I have mint growing in my herb garden in my house, but I've never really used it for anything other than, you know, like just going out there and for
Mojitos,
fragrance. Yeah,
let's be
yeah,
honest.
mojitos. Yeah, which I need a lime tree for that too. But yeah, the mint was a nice touch because, like I said earlier, just utilizing the Cooking Light Diet menus, it's kind of expanded my horizons in terms of flavors. Yeah, I never would have put mint on anything before, other than a mojito, and it really just accentuates this this recipe and just gives it like a nice hint of freshness, which I really enjoyed.
So mint is used a lot in Thai and Vietnamese cooking, as well as certainly other cuisines, but this recipe has a little bit of a Thai sort of flair to it, and the mint takes us there for sure, along with, you know, the rice vinegar and even the nut butter and the chili garlic sauce. Okay, so I think we're about ready to start pulling our components together. So I put that pork tenderloin in the oven, but through the magic of TV, we have one that's already cooked here. So I'm going to ask Matthew to shred this guy up.
Moment of truth. Shredding pork.
So, you know, we always say, like, use 2 forks to shred, and sometimes that doesn't cooperate. So there's a knife here. Yeah, you might want to cut it a little, because sometimes the meat just doesn't want to fully cooperate. Now with pork, oh, look how nicely that's cooked. So let's look at that guy. Little bit of pinkness in the middle. Don't be afraid of slightly pink pork. So it used to be a thing way back when that you wanted to cook pork to like 160 degrees, but the USDA now says it's fine to cook it to 145. We actually cooked this to 155, so there's still a little bit of pink in the middle. It keeps it very juicy, very tender and succulent, and lovely for this dish.
Can we also just point out, since we're live, that, you know, you don't have to be a food stylist to make good food, because I don't shred the prettiest pork in the world, but this is going to taste good regardless of how pretty my pork is shredded.
Ah, it looks great.
Thanks, Ann.
So while Matthew is working on that, I'll just start dishing it up. So I think the recipe, the actual recipe calls for fettuccine. We have 8 ounces of fettuccine, which is perfect for 4 servings. We're using whole wheat fettuccine because go whole grains. We always like the whole grains whenever we can get them in. And when you build your servings.
Ooh, and also, if you don't have whole wheat, or if you don't have the regular fettuccine, it's, I mean, you can absolutely audible to a different noodle, right? I mean,
that's right, absolutely.
Whatever you have, there's no sense in going out and spending money on noodles if you already have something available.
And Jen wants to know, why did you use low sodium soy sauce in the sauce and then add a little salt?
Oh, that's a great question. If I could have you guys sit with me at my desk when I'm entering recipe ingredients into our nutrition analysis software, you would see the pain. So you would feel the pain. So we use a combination of added salt and lower sodium soy sauce for the sauce. So we want soy sauce for that umami flavor. It's a little bit more rounded and a little bit more deeply flavored than just salt itself, and we like that for the sauce. We also want some salt itself on the pork, just to give it a little bit of seasoning. So by using a combination of both, we're able to achieve the flavors that we want without breaking the sodium bank. If we were to use all soy sauce, both to, like, say, marinate the pork and go into the sauce, our numbers might get really cranked up. Or if we were to use all salt, same thing. So sometimes we use different sources of salt. We'll use, like, say, miso and salt, or miso and soy sauce. So.
And Anne, one more question. So you're using noodles here, but could you use something like rice?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Yes, you could definitely use rice. You know, I'm always going to advocate for the whole grain, so brown rice, brown jasmine rice would be lovely. Any sort of noodle, as Matthew was saying, would work here. Soba noodles, if you know, soba noodles are really quick cooking. They're gluten-free. They're made with buckwheat flour. Those would be wonderful as well. So we just wanted to show and demo, like what Matthew was saying, when he makes this, he does a little bit of his meal prep for the week and goes ahead and dishes up some lunches. I like that for portion control, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
It keeps me honest. I'm not going back in. If it's already packed up for lunch the next day, then I'm not going to go back for seconds because I don't want to take away from my lunch.
Oh, no.
I'm making a mess here.
And that's like I was saying earlier, that's another great thing about utilizing the Cooking Light diet is you got these recipes where, I just slung pork across the counter.
Sling that pork.
Where you you can utilize recipes to make ahead. So yesterday, I designated prep day once a week, and I prepped 4 meals out and just froze everything ahead. Muffins for the recipe that you developed, the broccoli bacon muffin tin frittatas, which go to cookinglight.com, find that recipe, make it this week. It is the easiest, simplest, most delicious recipe for breakfast you'll ever have. And I don't even like broccoli. But I've got 24 of those bad boys in my freezer waiting for next week's breakfast. So.
I'm going to go ahead and drop the link
Yes.
in the comment section here.
Go grab that recipe.
I should let you, since you're a pro at this, I'll let you dish it up. So we've just divvied up 8 ounces of noodles, 8 ounces dry. When it's cooked, I'm not sure how many ounces it is, but it's about, I think, 4 cups. And then you divvy up the sauce, so that sauce is so flavorful from the nut butter, the chili garlic paste, the ginger. What else is in there?
The
rice vinegar, soy sauce.
Pasta water, which is an important component.
So tell us about the pasta water. What does the pasta water do for the sauce?
It just, you get that extra pasta flavor in it, so you're not just using like regular tap water, you're getting all that extra flavor and a little bit of that extra goodness from that.
Awesome.
From the pasta.
And the sauce might be a little bit too thick if you didn't have that. Like you want it to coat the noodles. You want it to be thin enough so that it coats the noodles well. And then if you don't mind divvying up the pork, we'll get that going.
I washed my hands.
He did, I saw him.
I can divvy better than I can shred, fortunately.
And then our finishing touches are going to be green onions and that fresh mint that I chopped up, which is lovely. And Matthew, tell us, like, what are some of your, like, if you were to serve this with a vegetable, what kind of vegetables would you use?
I would do some snap peas or some snow peas or some broccolini, something that you can just easily, put in a pot and boil up in 5 minutes, So you've got this whole entree, the main and the side dish that come together in 45 minutes.
That's perfect.
Get a nice little green to go with this beautiful meal.
We have a lot of questions about alternate pastas.
Oh, nice.
So do you think
I have some
there's
favorites.
3 that are popping out right now?
Okay.
Black bean noodles.
I have not tried those, but those are nice and high in fiber.
Zoodles. Do you think those could work, or would they be too liquidy?
So about the zoodles, I think those would work. I tend to keep those shredded thinly on the smaller spiralizer blade, and I like to keep them raw because once they do cook, they do water out a good bit. Maybe you warm them just slightly in a skillet, but I like to keep those guys raw. And if I were dishing this up to serve, to have leftovers the next day for lunch, if I were using the zoodles, I would eat it cold. Do you eat this hot or cold when you
I do it hot.
Yeah.
Okay. Some like it hot. That's me.
Any other questions?
There's one more about noodles.
Oh, okay, hang on. So we have, new pasta, NU pasta noodles. I've not heard of those.
Oh, I don't know what those are, but I'm going to look them up right when this is over. I'm excited to learn. There are all kinds of awesome alt pastas, especially if you're gluten-free. There are wonderful options now. Just a few years ago, the gluten-free pasta options maybe were not that great, but now there are tons of them. Corn pasta, there's quinoa pasta that's really good. My new favorite is the chickpea pasta. I think it's fantastic. So this is wonderful, Matthew. Thank you so much for joining
Thanks
today.
for having me. I'm really excited about lunch today.
Me too. And everybody, thank you so much for joining. Please like this post. Please give comments and let me know what kinds of recipes you'd like to see. Let me know what types of techniques you'd like to see explained. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week at this time. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.